Good afternoon, everybody. Woo! Thank you so much for coming. We recognize that your time is the most valuable gift that you could give to us, and we're very grateful that you would decide to spend that time with us this afternoon. I'm going to start off with a very quick show of hands, and I want everybody to be honest. Who thought 10 years ago you might be sitting in a room learning about a bank who's moving everything to the cloud? Yeah, not many, right? Yeah. I didn't see any hands. All right, so as a recovering CIO myself, 10 years ago I was the CIO at Dow Jones leading a big digital transformation where we were moving a lot of our IT estate to the cloud. We went from 56 data centers down to 6, moved about $100 million in cost to product development. The thing I'm most proud of is we went from a few software releases a year, if we were lucky, to hundreds a week. And everybody thought we were crazy at the time, and certainly all my peers didn't think banks were moving. But that time has come. And today we're going to learn from some of our esteemed colleagues and one of our most strategic customers and their partner about how they are, in fact, using the cloud to drive their digital transformation. So I'm delighted to be joined by our guests. If we want to just go down and introduce yourselves before we get started.
Mark Chastain, Arvest Bank, Executive Director of IT.
Hello, I'm Cameron Curtis, and I run Slalom's Global Google Center of Excellence.
Laura Merling, Arvest Bank, and I run transformation and bank operations.
Good afternoon all. Ninish, Ukkan, CTO at Arvest.
Thank you. Well, thanks for being here. My name is Stephen Orban. I look after our migration program and our ISV ecosystem and our marketplace business. And if it's one thing I've learned in working in hundreds of large-scale migrations over the course of the past decade, when I was at Dow Jones leading their transformation and then 8 years at AWS before I joined Google, is that the technology is often the easy part. A lot of what goes on in a transformation is around evolving your people, your process, and your culture, all having to evolve in unison to drive the kind of change that most of our customers are looking for when they move to the cloud. And in any kind of migration that I've seen that worked well, there tends to be 5 attributes. There's a business case and executive alignment on that business case, why you're doing what you're doing and making sure the executive team is aligned to it. There's a learning and enablement plan where all of the technology associates in particular have an understanding of what's going to change about their role and the skills that they need to learn in order to help drive the organization forward. There's a cloud team at the center who's thinking about how to harvest all the best practices and learnings from the migration, the transformation, so that they can enable workloads to move faster as they go. And they would tend to drive the 4th and the 5th, which is a clearly defined set of goals and some clear governance around it. So today we're going to have a discussion about what Arvest and Slalom is seeing around best practices like that. So Laura, I'll start with you if that's all right. How would you frame the state of the bank when you got there and sort of the goals and objectives that you had to drive the transformation you're working on now?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the invitation. Thank you all for joining us. So Arvest Bank, just to give a little background, we're a privately held bank, about $26 billion in assets, so mid-sized bank. We still like to think of ourselves as a community bank. We are very community-centric. So, the bank's been around for about 60 years. And so one of the key things that we needed to make sure is how do we keep relevant? How do we make sure we're around for the next 60 years or 100 years? And so that was one of the key things of our transformation goals. What you'll also see up here on the slide is just kind of what are the business things we were trying to do? How do we grow but yet be community focused? How do we try to continue to serve small business and commercial customers? A lot of folks are going after retail. Doesn't mean retail's not interesting, but where our strengths we're really in serving small business and commercial customers. Another aspect of this is how do we think about banking as a service as part of our future and where we're going and what we're doing. So all of that was kind of tied up in really what we wanted out of that transformation program. And we know it's about a 5-year program. So when we think about just GCP, so you go, okay, here's the transformation program, and then you think about Google Cloud, probably 2 main things. Broadly speaking, how do you get to simplification, standardization, and scale? right? That's kind of one set of how do we go achieve that. The last piece of it is really around data. We know that data is a key component of what will differentiate us in the end. Now, everybody says that, right? But it's about how you use that data, where you use it, how you use it to meet customers when, where, and how they want to be met. So that's really kind of it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Laura. Staying relevant certainly sounds like a worthy goal. Tell us a little bit more about how you ended up choosing to work with Google and then, of course, Slalom, who we know is helping you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did do a short stint at Google. We were just talking about that earlier, so I was a little bit biased. But the reality is, when I think about Google and prior to joining Google, and also here just learning about everything that from at the hardware layer all the way up, so hardware from a security infrastructure layer and that built-in security all the way through to what we can do with AI and Vertex AI and what that might help us with in terms of ML ops. So knowing that we needed like best-in-class technology, especially if we wanted data as a differentiator. I'd say the next thing is really the approach. So my role when I was at Google was to be a transformation officer, which meant we partnered with the customer to help them meet transformation goals. It wasn't, it was an interesting role, right? And it still exists. We were just talking about a couple of my friends that are meeting right now that do that role, but it was this, how do we go help you be successful? What are the metrics you want to achieve and how do we help you do that? And how are we there for the long haul? We're going to have some hits and we're going to have some misses. And we wanted somebody that would partner with us. That also takes me into why Slalom. So Slalom, just like Google, has been a partner. Everything that we do is side by side. It is not, I'm going to do it for you and then hand it over to you at some point. Or they're not there to be embedded in our team for the next 20 years and just do the roles of our team. That relationship is really about a relationship and making our folks successful and teaching them along the way side by side. And that's really what we are looking for. And I had previous experience with Slalom on projects, so I knew their approach. But partnership was key.
I love the side-by-side phrase. I'd argue that side-by-side is how tech vendors and tech partners are going to stay relevant as well, as opposed to the throwing it over the wall that maybe we would have seen over the course of the last several decades. Cam, talk to us a little bit about your approach working with Arvest.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. So, look, when you're working with a company that is making a massive technology shift, in this case, moving to the cloud, enabling a new data platform, the risk is not in the technology. Technology is always solvable. It's in the people. It's the friction that happens under this pace of change that places all the risk. And so you have to really get at a human level and engage with the stakeholders such that they can identify exactly what you're saying about where do you want to go and how are you going to get there. We have a whole model about it. It's up there on the thing called Business Technology Enabled by Google. It ties directly to the key points that Stephen was talking about in terms of like the RAMP program. And what that does is the whole model sets your client up for success, and then you work yourself out of the job. That's the end goal, because their success is where you are successful. And unlocking yourself in that way allows you to do with. It's incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. So switching gears just a little bit, Laura, I suspect coming in, 60-year-old bank might have some certain habits that they've acquired over that period of time. I suspect that maybe there were some people you had to convince, maybe up, down, and across the organization. How'd you approach that?
Absolutely. So I think first, we wanted to know where we were. You have to kind of understand, right? I'm coming into one, I'd never been in financial services before. I'd done transformation, but in different industries. So I'm like, what do we got here? What did they really hire me to do? And so part of it was focusing on what we called a vulnerability study. And so the vulnerability study really gave us insights to the fact that we weren't really meeting the customer's needs or expectations on time to market, new technology, et cetera. And so the question was, how are we going to do that? And so we didn't want to make this about cost savings. So our transformation, yes, we'll measure some cost savings, but that is not the key metric. It is this vulnerability study, and we want to actually minimize the vulnerability of them leaving. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, If they're at 10, they kind of like you and they're going to stick around. The rocks and the shoes are okay. If you're at a 1 and they feel one more pebble, they're leaving. I would like to be closer to the 10 than the 1. So that's kind of the framing of it. And then what we actually did in terms of convincing the folks in terms of the direction that we wanted to take. So it was the vulnerability study. And then what it was actually doing was figuring out how do we implement something that achieves that vulnerability study objectives, like removing customer pain points.
Cool. So TCO is almost a table stakes, and then customer retention and not being vulnerable to them leaving is the real business case that
Customer retention.
Now your executives are aligned on, which is nice. So where did you start? So now you've picked Google, you've picked Slalom, you have your sort of top level of objectives. What'd you do next?
Yeah, well, so kind of knew I wanted to partner with both, but hadn't yet picked them because you have to go, okay, so tell us how bad is it, right? Tell us how bad the patient is. So the vulnerability study was just the customer view. So there was a much like you have your 5 pillars, I have a 5-pillar model for transformation. And one of those pillars is a technology assessment. And the technology assessment includes an evaluation of all of our systems, all of our infrastructure. And so we had hired Slalom to help us go do that technology assessment. What do we have? What should we be retiring? What is eligible for migration? What do we have and what's the state of it? Another piece of it that we also asked them to do was a data assessment, so a data maturity assessment. This was another key piece. Where is our data? What do we know about our data? How do we get access to our data? Can we? Is it locked up? Is it possible? Do we have contracts that get us that data? Like, what's our data maturity? And I would probably say on a scale of 1 to 10, we were somewhere around a 2, if you really think about data maturity. And a lot of that had to do with the way that the bank was structured historically, which was into 14 individual business units. And so you actually, your data was very siloed in those business units and then by product. So it's been a lot of work. But those foundations that we got from Slalom on the data and the systems, we still use those today. Those were the framing for our multi-year strategy and migration plan.
Yeah, interesting. For 14 data silos sounds like a lot of silos to break down. So I guess that's probably a good transition point to Ninish. Sounds like a pretty ambitious body of work that your team had a lot to do with. How did you get started?
I mean, as Laura said, we're in the process of this transformation, which means that, our data growth was putting a lot of strain on our legacy data stores, right? We're talking about a 60-year-old bank. And, as she also mentioned, data is locked up in these many different silos, and we have to unlock that data. So we needed a reliable, scalable platform, to fulfill those business needs. As Laura mentioned, we started with an assessment. What's our current landscape looks like? And that's when we engaged Slalom to help us with our future strategy. And our high-level strategy is we need to get that raw data into a central store. We need to curate it. We need to hydrate it. And then we derive the analytics around that. Along the way, we also wanted to make sure that there's privacy, governance, and security. I see Neil staring at me.
Our security guy. And the data governance guy.
The CISO is always watching.
I think Sundar said it best yesterday when he was talking about Google and AI, to be bold and responsible. Our transformation that, Laura and us, we're driving is bold. And with privacy, governance, and security, we want to be responsible. So I feel like, it mirrors what we're trying to do at Arvest. And then we identified use cases. There were some high-value use cases that we thought would be the best to start with. You feel like you want to do a big bang, but that could take forever, and you want to show value. So how do we take these high-value use cases and start delivering on that? So we started with automated underwriting or sentiment analysis on our call center calls, various fraud use cases, our MLOps strategy for how do we build our AI ML models and Gen AI. So was kind of our journey on how we started.
Yeah, it makes sense. So centralizing your sort of data store and your analytics in one place so you can start to break down those silos, prioritizing the first handful of use cases. The way I always like to talk to CIOs about this is pick a couple of use cases that are important enough that your business gets excited, but not so important that you're going to get fired if you screw it up. So get those kind of quick wins on the board. Maybe tell us a little bit more about the sort of attributes about BigQuery that we were really compelled by.
We were looking for a data platform that was fully managed. We wanted to make sure that it was reliable, scalable, that it was cloud native. As you mentioned, 10 years ago we weren't thinking of cloud, but it's all cloud now, and it's all cloud native. So how do we pick a solution that's cloud native, and also that a platform that has storage and compute that's decoupled and could scale independently. So we looked at several leaders in the space, and there are several good leaders in the space. But as Laura mentioned earlier, our partnership with Google, kind of led us to BigQuery. We knew that we couldn't go wrong with BigQuery, and that's how we started. And it's not just a data warehouse, but it's the entire supply system. How do we get the raw data in? How do we curate it? How do we hydrate it? How do we get analytics around that? So BigQuery enabled us to do that. Also, the machine learning capabilities that BigQuery provided our data science team to build those AI/ML models. So those are some of the reasons why we picked BigQuery.
Cool. Thanks for that. Laura, tell us a little bit about as some of this work started to progress. So now you're breaking down some of the silos, some of the data is being hydrated, and you're doing so in a secure and well-governed way. How did you kind of communicate the progress to keep people informed and patient and with your move?
Patience. Patience is a key word. I think everybody else has more patience than I do. You can ask my team later. Not right now. But I think part of it was just starting with what's the value prop, right? Why are we trying to do this? What do we want to achieve? And so there were kind of two key things that really came clear through this vulnerability study from a customer lens. So the more that we could face it when we talked to the executive team and the shareholders about the customer point of view, the better off we were. So one of the very first things was, how do we have a single view of a customer? If it's the holy grail, right, of data. And so we would like to achieve it. But what happened is our customers would feel the fact that we have a credit card business, and we have a wealth management business, and we have a mortgage business. Every one of those have their own applications. I don't have a single view of my financial life. That's okay, but they might want that. So how do we actually create a consistent experience and a consistent view across what we offer to our customer base? Because most customers, if they're sticking around with you for 10 plus years, they probably have 3 to 5 products, in some cases more. So that was one. The next one was really, how do we think about it from real-time data perspective, right? Does anybody here work at a bank? Maybe. You in batch? Maybe. So how do we go from batch to real time? And it's a progression. It's an education for our associates, but it's also an education for customers. And so those two things, like as a starting point, was perfect. Then what we do is we tie our roadmap and our prioritization to how we're solving those two areas for the company. And so it's conversations with the board and board meetings quarterly. It's our CEO does a monthly CEO update. And so we have the CEO up there, but it's not just me with the CEO. It'll be the CFO talking about our metrics. It'll be one of the other business line owners talking about what we're doing with them. We do something called a monthly transformation talk. We have about 6,500 people at the bank. Our monthly transformation talk averages 500 attendees. And that is not just our technology team, but the broader bank. And it's, what are we doing? Where are we going? What's the status? And then also we started something recently. We have something called Daily Popcorn, which is a quick little snack of updates. But every Tuesday is the transformation update. So it's Transformation Tuesday, like your Taco Tuesday. We get Transformation Tuesday. So that's really how it is. And then we have a set of metrics that we've been working very closely with the CFO on to demonstrate the value. And those metrics are a combination of not just dollar value out, but customer improvement as well as associate improvement, we'll say, time reduction.
Well, who doesn't love popcorn and who doesn't love Transformation Tuesday? That sounds amazing. It sounds so simple to just have these regular mechanisms to keep everybody abreast of where you're going. But I think in today's day and age, to be a technology leader, to be a successful technology leader, evangelizing your team's work and having a steady drumbeat of the evangelism of that is is super important to manage expectations and drive change. Ninish, maybe a little bit more. What else have you learned in terms of what's made you successful?
I would say that the partnership with Slalom helping us early on and pretty much being with us all along this journey. It's given us the training wheels for us to be independent and be able to run on our own. So what we have done along this journey is we've been upskilling our associates and getting them up to speed, and it's been going really well. So we got Slalom working with us side by side with those training wheels. We are learning and we are upskilling our associates, and our dependency has been, I would say, reducing as time goes on. So that has been a good, side by side to what you had mentioned earlier. So that two in a box working side by side has worked, wonders for us, and we're trying to do that across the board.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. So one of the things that they have worked out, and you can even talk to Mevin, who's out here as our head of data engineering. One of the things that we've done and super excited about with Slalom was started with this, and we have this map because we showed it to our board members because they're like, well, how long are you going to need these consultants, right? We like Slalom, but how long are you going to need them, right? So what we did is we created this map that showed where we started with Slalom, where it was all Slalom people. It was just a handful to get us started. And then it ramped up and it was, I don't know, somewhere around 20 or so people. And now as you start to see, so it's been 18 months later and now we're down to what, five or so Slalom folks helping us on that data platform. So we've actually mapped it and modeled it and said, look, every time we do something with a partner, it should look like this if it's something new that we're learning. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
It's all good. That graph is the epitome of working yourself out of a job, it sounds like, Cam. A little bit more maybe from you on the paired programming approach you took to do that?
Absolutely. It's just like Ninish said. The other thing, though, and I think we have a question about it later, but there's what Laura led for Arvest, in which we helped with, is also a lot about role definition. So if the paired programming or co-development together, kind of on the job, but also people's jobs change, and you're explicit and have forethought about it, then you minimize the friction later when they're mad at you because you've moved their cheese, right? To just quote another MBA kind of quote, but it's that. And so each team, their fundamental education, they go in and start working on it. There's a huge variety of their ability to handle the change and move to it. Some are fast and they're off and running. And Mark's got some teams that are like maybe a little bit too advanced. They're like, but then others, and particularly application teams who are like, they're doing a thing and they're really good at the thing. The cloud is not helping them. They need more help and more support as they go through. But they're getting there. And as we migrate each cloud, each team to the cloud, you can see the difference from beginning to end.
Yeah, I'm a big believer, and you already have the people you need to succeed with the cloud. You just have to train and enable them. And yes, sometimes there's maybe a little agita around that if they don't have the skill set, but once they do. So let's talk a little bit about building the foundation and setting a strong landing zone. Mark, talk to us a little bit about how you went about that.
So as we started on data platform, we knew we had to build a strong foundation to support Arvest as new initiatives because we were going down a new road. But it was new territory for us. We didn't have any background in this. So we partnered with Slalom to help us build that foundation. And Slalom was really patient to help us learn and educate us on Google services and solutions. We wanted to be very thorough in everything that we did to understand IAM, security, networking, logging and monitoring, disaster recovery, and everything else. So once we got the foundation built, to start our new initiatives, we had two landing spaces we needed to build. We needed to build one for data platform, and we needed to build one for our new core banking system. Once we had those built, then we built 7 new landing zones for migration and modernization. During that time, we extended our Active Directory up into Google Cloud. We built golden images to deploy, and we included other services such as Managed AD and Cloud SQL. We did all this in the first year. We built all this using Terraform to make sure we had repeatable processes, and we focused on automation because we need to do all this to be critical for us to scale quickly.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, the golden image approach and having a centralized cloud team kind of really maintain the best practices and the patterns not only leads to greater scale, but it sounds like a more secure operating model as well. Super important to get that right up front. What changed as you migrated more applications? What'd you learn?
What didn't change was probably the question, but no, it was, before we ever even started our GCP foundation, Slalom partnered with our enterprise architecture group to go through and do an assessment on our top apps. So we really wanted to take these apps as soon as the foundation was built and start lifting and shifting, but we needed to understand their cloud compatibility and how to move them. So we were going to move these and then teach our teams how to migrate to the cloud. But the more we dug into our app stack, the more we saw how intertwined it was. Over time, to save cost, we had deployed multiple applications on the same server. Same thing with databases. Same thing with our middleware layer. So it was heavily intertwined to where we couldn't just pick something up and move it because of how we had done it and just the complexity of it. So we really had to come back in and search for an app that was not coupled so tightly. So after we got the foundation built, about 2 months after, we migrated our first app. And during that time, we migrated also our largest database over there. 4 months after we got the foundation stood up, we moved our first financially significant app, which was a huge win for us. Part of why it took longer is, what we learned over there was how interconnected and intertwined and complicated our system had built as we grew up as a bank. But as we did that, we pivoted quickly to teach our teams how to modernize their applications. So what we did was we came back in and did a full assessment. So from our initial modernization or assessment that we did, we took those apps and started modernizing them. Then we came back in and did a full assessment of our entire stack. So we modernized. We went back and assessed over 600 applications in 3 to 4 months to come in and build that long-term map on how we're going to migrate over the years or over the next 3 years. So by where we started at, we've pivoted 3 to 4 times on our strategy.
Mm-hmm. So remaining nimble is super important, and learning as you go and making sure that the stuff you learn from, this is a monolith and I'm going to need to break this up, and then maybe I'm going to do some modernization along the way. How did you manage the expectations as they changed maybe a little bit?
Just showed a picture of a giant bowl of spaghetti. No, I'm teasing. Which is what it feels like, right? I mean, when we dug in and we were like, okay, yep, but it goes back to, you've got 14 different banks, you've got different products, you've acquired stuff. You all know that, right? When you acquire companies, you end up with stuff. So what we tried to do at the very beginning before we started this, we aligned with them that said, look, we're going to do this and we're going to learn. This is all learning. It's going to be a journey. We're going to turn left and right. We at least all know where our destination is. So knowing where the destination is, but knowing that we're going to have to make adjustments along the way was very helpful. We also had launched something to let them, to signal like, look, again, we like our partner, but we want our teams to be able to own this and do it themselves. So we launched something called Me at Arvest, which was an upskilling, reskilling program. I think Ninish had mentioned it. So that was a key piece of it. And then what we do is we track milestones and numbers. And so the stuff that Mark can tell you about, the numbers of servers and the number of databases and the assessments that we do. And we kept them, we were very honest about like, hey, look, we did this, we're pivoting. Here's why. This is what we learned. And as long as you share what you're learning and they go, okay, we understand, versus trying to hide it. Like it just wasn't going to work. So we've been pretty transparent.
Yeah, so creating that learning culture and then continuing to really communicate that across. Ninish, anything you'd add?
Well, I would say that as part of the modernization, once we set the foundation for the data platform, then we were able to embark on some of the other things that we wanted to do, which is our analytics platform, our BI strategy. How do we do data governance, data quality? That is something that is going extremely well. And everybody's talking about AI, ML, and Gen AI. We are excited. We have many use cases that are in flight. Working, with our Google partners, and we, I would say, some already out there, some in flight, close to getting there. Laura's always anxious about that.
I'm the one with no patience, not the rest of the team.
So some of those, are futuristic stuff that we're working on. And what we could also check off is retire some of the legacy data warehouses. And, that is something that it's we don't we don't take credit for. But how do we, the fact that we have decommissioned some of that legacy stuff and look more into the future. So that's what I'm excited about. There's so much that needs to be done, and we are excited with the progress that we have made so far.
Yeah, it's almost like once you actually start to make some progress on the modernization, the aperture opens to do more modern things with analytics and artificial intelligence. It's frankly the reason I joined Google from Amazon, as I felt Google was much better positioned on the analytics and AI front, and it sounds like maybe you're starting to see that promised land. Mark, anything you would add on what changed in your team as you started to do more modernization?
Oh gosh, it was a big pivot for us. We went from theory to actually doing the work and showing it. And as we moved in, initially we thought, hey, we're going to go up and we're just going to move everything up there into GCP native solutions. But as we got into it, we realized, hey, the complexity, we've got to split what we're doing. Part of it, we need to do modernization. The other part, we need to do lift and shift. So on the modernization end, we came in and we took our most complex apps, and then we started to redesign them and make sure they used as many cloud native solutions as they could. Then we used GCVE for two purposes. One is to lift and shift and sunset one of our data centers. The other is to use it as a springboard to modernize those apps down the road into more GCP native solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that sort of splitting apart the migration or the lift and shift tracks and the modernization tracks. And sometimes I see customers fall into the trap of, we're going to modernize everything before we move it to the cloud. And then they realize that they're still going to be there for 5 plus years because it just takes a lot. My favorite trick I've seen is company I worked with, Edmunds, years ago to do a pretty large scale migration. They implemented something they called the 2-week rule. And they gave all of their teams 2 weeks to migrate every app from start to finish. And they had to finish the app in 2 weeks. They could do as much modernization as you want, as long as it was done in 2 weeks. And I see that pattern now a lot to try to strike the right balance between migration and modernization. Cam, in terms of like the partnership, in terms of, Laura talked a little bit about that graph. How did it change and evolve as the team started to get skilled, they're learning more and more, the migrations are moving faster now in 2 different swim lanes? How did your engagement sort of shift?
Yeah, you start off with a lot of the kind of prep work is about getting leaders aligned. So it's like a whole org design and, ways of working assessments and all that consulting stuff that helps people bring along for the journey. But the things change, right? They're not those people and those skills. Once they deliver the kind of here's the plan and here's how you can do it, they don't have a role to play anymore. So you go out of that kind of design in the future to executing in the future. At the same time, you see more engineers come on to go and execute for that. That's where the velocity comes from. We're already starting to see that some of the engineers are starting to shrink down. We talked about the data, and from a migration standpoint, we're going to be ramping down over the next 6 months, probably to nothing. Which just means that it allows Mark and his team and Ninish and his team to pay attention to the things that they have to continue, because it's a 5-year plan, right? It just keeps going. Right now, we have hit a velocity. It's not quite 2 weeks, but there's a lot of speculation.
It's the 3-week rule.
Yeah, right. It's like how do we get there? And we are not at a place where a year ago we thought we would ever get to. It's fantastic. So.
Yeah, cool. So touched a little bit on the upskilling through paired programming and the 2 in a box. Laura, you talked about some of the Taco Transformation Tuesdays and popcorn, some of these clever initiatives. Talk to me at Arvest is a really sort of compelling initiative. I think maybe the audience would learn a lot from.
Yeah, me at Arvest, and if you want to know about it, there's another track that Miriam can talk about more at 3:30. But one of the things that's interesting, so me at Arvest was an upskilling, reskilling program that we put together, but we launched it at the same time we signed our contract with Google. And the reason for that was you've got a lot of people that our whole company had never done anything in cloud. And so now you're trying to move them to cloud. And so there was a lot of FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Can they do it? Will they teach me? Will I still have a job? So there was a lot of that happening, and we needed to figure out how to stop that. And so we launched this Me at Arvest program. And what it really is a set of role profiles that had learning journeys. And we started with the role profiles that were associated with cloud engineering and data engineering on cloud. So it was the starting point. It was really interesting to do those. It took us a whole year, really, to get that program. We started that last April, and it took us all the way till just probably February, March this year to year, to get it out to the entire organization. So we have about 1,200 people in my org. And so it's half technology and half bank operations. We rolled out to bank operations as well. But a lot of that was about making sure people knew that we really cared. We were in it. We were committed to demonstrating that we really wanted them to be a part of this migration. Just so you know, we didn't create that. We actually borrowed it from a partner that actually had me at Slalom created, and I'd worked with them long enough to know that it existed and said, "Can I steal that from you? Will you sell that to us?" And they were like, "We've never thought about that." And I was like, "I'd love it if you could." So we got that, but really what this set us up for was a way to start the cloud modernization, because we wanted them to learn it. So that's why I started with the cloud skills first. They wanted to learn it and then be able to practically apply what it was that they were doing. The thing that really then hit the nail on the head, just so you guys know, so that we started that in April, we hosted a Google Day in November. So we had lots of fits and starts with the Me at Arvest. We hosted a Google Day in November, and it was literally 500 people, our whole technology teams, plus some folks in the bank, and all day off-site it was like this, like a mini Google conference. And it was absolutely amazing, and people were super excited. It's also the first time they'd all been in the same room again in a long time since COVID. And literally, just so you know, from a metrics perspective, we do something called it's a drive change survey. It's like, are you coming along with the transformation? And how do you think about it relative to the leadership helping you and to you feeling like you know what your role is? We made a 21-point jump for our team for skills, upskilling and reskilling, 21 points. They felt like they were part of that upskilling and reskilling movement. So for me, that was kind of a success.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think when I was at Dow Jones, I had the same thing. It was I thought, well, we're going to move to the cloud. All the IT team, the technology team is going to be super pumped because they're going to get to learn new things, and it's the novel thing. And that was actually the hardest part, was getting the technology folks on board. Ninish, maybe talk. So that's some amazing progress on like the talent side. Maybe talk to us a little bit more about the sort of technical benefits and the metrics you used.
I would say from a technical metric standpoint, as Laura had said earlier, unlocking that data from those different data sources. We've been able to unlock at least 15 data sources that we were able to bring into our Google BigQuery platform. About 2,000 plus tables that we were able to bring in, and our storage volumes over 400 terabytes. So a lot of progress. But I would say that this is all good technical metrics, but they need to deliver the business value, which is what Laura's looking for. Yeah. So good data points, good. We've been working really hard to bring that all in, but it goes back to those use cases. How do we solve for those use cases? And that's the ultimate goal, and that's what we're striving for.
Yeah, makes sense. Mark, anything you would add on some of the technical work underway?
Yeah, say on this 18-month journey, we've accomplished a lot. So, we basically modernized 10 applications in the GCE, 7 in the GKE, built 245 new servers in GCE, and we've lifted and shifted 987 servers into GCVE. We're utilizing over 20 plus new cloud solutions. And through our assessments, we've gone through and we've identified 140 applications that we can retire in favor of new technologies. So a lot of amazing work over the last 18 months.
Yeah, that's amazing. Almost 1,000.
Close.
We'll get to 1,000 soon. Next week?
We're probably actually...
Next week.
Yeah.
The CISO says 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. 3.
All right. Laura, what's next? So you get through this transformation, what's next? What's next for the bank?
We have to finish the transformation first. I might be holding Mark to migrating us out of our first data center fully by November. That'd be next. Are you ready? So that's one of the things we're going to do. But I think, so a lot of the last 2 years, so we started this about 2 years ago, it was really about building the foundation. We were, building the foundation, trying to get some quick wins, like small quick wins along the way, but building the foundation. So the next real big thing is actually doing the transformation. What are the big things we want to do? We've partnered with Thought Machine to build out a new core banking platform, right? We've got a bunch of AI use cases that we're about to roll out. So we're kind of excited about all those. And really it's just now starting to show the business the value of the investments that we've made over the last 2 years. So that's what I'm excited about. Right. In the next 4 months, we'll have 3 Gen AI use cases in production. Mevin, yes. And so, those to me are really cool. One of them is within our engineering organization or within the data team and being able to do, taking and automating a data steward's job in terms of like labeling the columns, things that would take forever or categorizing them, I should say. Another thing is we're doing some stuff, Ask Arvest on our website as a way to use Gen AI to help customers navigate things and want an internal version of that. So yeah, I'm excited about, I'm looking short-term to look long-term.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited about the transformation you're driving, and we're grateful to be a part of it. So thank you for doing this panel with us. Maybe we'll end with another show of hands. Who thinks it's now possible to get a bank migrated to the cloud? All right, that's a big difference. I'll take it. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.